Hi there, my name's Rob, and I'm a avid football fan. And for a long time, I've wanted to do something to do with football tactics. Always been interested in England progressing to finals of tournaments, and it's never happened in my lifetime. We'll get to the final of the tournament, I should say. But this year is different. Yes, last night England defeated Denmark 2-1, and the feeling is that football is coming home, and the feeling, the sensation from the fans, the pundits, seem to be more of the same, please, against Italy, and we'll beat them. But I'm early doors putting out a different shout. I think Gareth Southgate has been excellent so far in his game management and his team selection. He's been conservative, he's been pragmatic, is the major word, I think, throughout the tournament. And we've had our slices of luck, but we've played okay in spells, but we haven't risked things. We've not gone gung-ho. We've played safe, we've played well, and yes, we've relied on that luck a little bit at times, like the penalty last night was a soft one, but we've looked okay. We haven't looked too shaky. But and there's a big but here. I'm calling it early. If we play the expected team or the similar style that we have done so far, Italy will have a better chance against us. Italy will be looking at that expected England lineup. I think Roberto Mancini is a great manager. He'll be looking at England and thinking, you know what, we can take on Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips in midfield. We can deal with England if they go conservative and go 3-4-3. We can deal with that. And it's about the individual matchups. If England go as predicted, as expected, you look at the matchups around the team. Sterling left wing, be coming up against Di Lorenzo. He won't have a problem with Sterling's pace, his acceleration, his athleticism. That's Di Lorenzo's game. He'll absolutely deal with it. He'll mark Sterling. If Kane just plays up top, plays direct, plays at the number 9, number 10 position, but Bonucci and Chiellini, they won't be wary of that. If, England play the 3-4-3 expected, if Trippier comes in on the right, or even if he doesn't, if England just play the same with the two holding midfielders, up against no direct opponent, why? Italy don't play with a number 10. The place to look out for in that defensive midfield slot from England, the players to look out for, Barella, who comes forward on the right of the midfield three, and Insigne cuts in from the left. That expected move, that goal that he got against Belgium. And that goal, to me, highlights, if you play 3-4-3 against Italy, they'll love it. Because Italy will dominate the ball against us. We struggled against Spain, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Italy will have more of the ball against us. They've got better ball-playing midfielders than we do. If we go with a 3-4-3, or even if it's the 4-2-3-1, Italy are likely to have more of the ball in that situation. Jorginho, Verratti, Barella, they'll keep that ball. You have the athleticism of Chiesa on the right-hand side if he plays, or the guile of Berardi if he plays instead. It's likely to be Chiesa after his performance. And Immobile's got all the movement up front. So they've got talented players who, from the first game, from the first moment, on paper, are all good players. They're all very good players, and that's sort of similar to England, except England have potentially, arguably, the next level in a couple of attacking positions. Italy, arguably, are just lacking something up front. They're maybe lacking a Harry Kane instead of a Immobile. They're lacking a bit of, they're lacking a Pedri that Spain had. They're lacking the De Bruyne, the Lukaku even. Italy just need one extra player, almost one or two extra players to be like France. Italy with Mbappe, wow, there's no question whether Italy are favourites. But England, we can adjust to nullify or to combat against Italy and give them something to think about. That's the thing, the Italians are all tactically sound, and I think they will very easily have a game plan to make England look a bit silly if it's Rice and Phillips, and it'll be, likely maybe Mount has got a huge amount of emphasis on him if we play the 4-2-3-1, or Mount might even be dropped if it's 3-4-3. And so, in my opinion, it's just a call out there right now. In my opinion, England, they need to just look back through the tournament. Italy have had great games. They've played well in every game, arguably except one, the most recent one, the Spain game. Spain dominated possession. Italy hung in there. They played on the counter. Ultimately, they're fortunate because they've made it through on penalties, but nobody would have begrudged Spain that victory. Spain played better than Italy. Spain dominated Italy, and Spain are a young team. It's a totally different Spain team to the past. I know there's Busquets in still there, who was on another level in that game. Declan Rice is not Sergio Busquets. Declan Rice is not going to dominate that midfield against Italy. And I mean this respectfully, Declan Rice is unlikely to be in a winning lineup against Italy in a final of the European Championship. He's done a great job. He's been a brilliant body defensively to allow England to have some stability and to play risk-free. But Declan, the time to make a change, in my opinion, and it's the big change, the big call that managers have to make, and Gareth Southgate has not been scared of making changes, is to give Declan Rice the night off. And that's harsh on him, because it's difficult. I'd say Declan Rice, he's not done a lot wrong, but there are instances where he's got things wrong. He's not done that much right offensively. And so England, I think, the chance to go a bit more progressive, a bit more possession based, to learn from the tournament is the final. Play like Spain, England. And it's a very, there's a simple lineup in my opinion. Obviously Pickford in goal. Shaw's cemented that left back slot. But Shaw has got, so he's left back, but he's got a different role tomorrow. He's got a different role on Sunday, sorry. He's going to be up against Federico Chiesa. Shaw is not going to be bombing on. He's not going to be overlapping. And I'll come back to that in a minute. So Shaw left back, but he's tasked with keeping an eye on Chiesa. Not bombing forward as much. We can't rely on Shaw getting forward. Because if he gets forward and leaves Federico Chiesa up against Maguire, or even if Rice, with that temptation, if Rice playing, Federico Chiesa can easily bypass Rice or Maguire. His athleticism, his acceleration, his pace, his desire, he could comfortably punish England on the counter if Shaw just bombs forward like he has done in the last few games. So it's what, again, and that is another thing of 3-4-3, like that England have attempted to have. If you have Maguire on the left of a 3 and Shaw bombing forward at wing back, Chiesa's free, you've still got that problem. So that's where it's not a game for 3-4-3. It's not a game to leave a gap in the middle for Insigne to cut into from the left-hand side. So you need a body in defensive midfield. You need a 4-3-3, in my opinion, in this game. And so it's Shaw left back. Maguire Stones, there's not a lot to say about that. They've been a great partnership. Stones has had an incredible turnaround. I'm a Manchester City fan. Stones has had an incredible turnaround from 18 months ago, 12 months ago. There's not a doubt in anyone's mind that John Stones, should he be starting the Euro 2020 final, and that is incredible. That is a testament to John Stones of what a good, solid tournament he's had. He's been brilliant. And Maguire, excellent. Just said I'm a Man City fan, but Maguire has been excellent when he's come in. There's not a doubt in anyone's mind that Maguire also starts. That one's easy. Maguire, Stones, and Walker. His athleticism, his recovery runs have been phenomenal. Other teams will be looking at that, thinking, what? In the end of the ground that he can make up is just, it puts pressure on players. That Thomas Muller chance, another right back would not have been anywhere near Thomas Muller when he had that chance. It's just a little thing. He didn't get close enough to stop him, but was that enough just to put him off? Potentially so. So the back four, they've been solid. They still stay there the same. Shaw, Maguire, Stones, Walker. But as I say, the attacking threat that Shaw's had in the last few games, his overlapping, his crosses, that's going to be rare in this final when Chiesa's his opponent. So Shaw has to stay, and the one who can potentially attack is Walker out of those four. Walker can potentially go on the overlap because it's a new partnership for Italy down the left, Insigne and Emerson, and that is the reason as well, in my opinion. We do make changes. We do change the overlap inside. We do change the Shaw-Sterling partnership, however good it's been, because the temptation in England for pundits, for managers in the past, is if something's gone well, you stick with it. You do not change that, and that is why we haven't got to finals in the past. And that's where Southgate seemed different, because like that change to 3-4-3 against Germany highlighted so much, and then reverting back to a 4 against Ukraine, and sticking with the 4 at the back, not necessarily doing the expected thing, not doing the popular thing, not putting Grealish in, decisions like that. He's adapting. He's not afraid to make surprising decisions, and this is the thing. I think throughout the tournament, the opposition manager's been questioning things. What are they going to play? And I think if England do go cautious or go pick the same team, Mancini will be prepared for that. We need to give Roberto Mancini something to think about in that Italian lineup. And the thing that they'll fear is a repeat of that Spanish game. So 4 at the back, sorted. I mentioned it earlier, Declan Rice. I think Declan Rice has had a good tournament. Don't think he's had a great one. He's had his moments where he vacates his position, particularly in the second half of games, in the big games as well. Germany, he vacated his position when in the same move where Sterling lost the ball and Muller broke through. Declan Rice was in the Germany penalty box at that point. I don't know why. Against Denmark, second half, Declan Rice was playing 1-2s and bombing forward. It's like it may be a tactic, but it's like it doesn't logically make sense, and that's why I don't think it's a tactic. I think it is Declan Rice sometimes gets a bit excited, and then on the other side he's been a great body, he's been a great cover for Shaw bombing forward, because it will drop in. He's been dropping into the back line to play a 3, but it's normally in possession. It's just a stability thing. For me, Declan Rice has almost been there so we don't get too excited. So we don't so it's almost we keep playing these simple balls at the back to preserve energy. And I think he's done a good job, but the time to just go, we need a different formation. We can't play the 4-2-3-1 or the 3-4-3 with Rice and Phillips. It's almost to go, without spoiling the whole lineup, it's to go the way we ended the last game. So it's Phillips sits. Phillips can do that role where he sits and he can play, because we want more of the ball against Italy. We want them to be chasing again when they've just chased that game against Spain for 120 minutes. We want to be the ones in possession if we can be. Keep hold of the ball, make Italy think, make them drop back, make them defend. And Phillips can do that role. He can be the body there for when Insigne cuts in from the left on his right foot. Phillips has got to be there. That's why you can't play 3-4-3. You've got to have a City. You've got to have a Busquets. Was there. Insigne did not have that moment. That he did against Belgium, and he's had earlier in the tournament and missed. It's like Phillips sits, and the players around Phillips, the person that you're like, he's come on in important moments in games, but it's like, if you look back, you reflect, if we make a change in the final, and the change is we let go of Phillips, who's never played a Champions League, full stop, never mind a Champions League final. You've got Henderson, who's been part of one of the most successful team, or one of the most successful teams in England in the last few years, in terms of Champions Leagues, in terms of winning the league, in terms of being a captain, a leader. You have Henderson. Jordan Henderson should come back in that team now. It's time for him to be back in the team. So Phillips, Henderson, and Mount. Mount will play an important role. His energy, his off-the-ball movement, his scanning ability, he's had a good tournament. Again, I think he's not much talk about him in the last game, and he's gone off and things like that. Like, went off in the Denmark game, but he's a good player. He's a very solid 8 out of 10 player. And they're the sorts of players that you need. And he's got his teammate Jorginho that he could potentially be up against. I think Mount will earn free kicks against Jorginho. He can also drop back and help out defensively with Barella. He can be an important player, Mount. So you still have Mount in there. Now the thing that I talked about before, in terms of the front three, the expectation, the standard thing is Sterling left, Kane middle, Saka right, Sancho right, Foden right, even whoever. And that's it. But for me, I mentioned it before, Luke Shaw is not going to be bombing on in this game, or he shouldn't be bombing on as much as he has done because of Chiesa's threat. So you don't, that Sterling-Shaw partnership has to be different. It can't be the same as it's been in the last couple of games. However successful, however good it's been, that is too risky to leave Chiesa to be counter-attacking. Shaw's got to sit more than he has been doing in the last couple of games. And like the fullbacks were doing earlier in the tournament. England can play that way with the fullbacks further back. So that arguably then, instead, I think I mentioned it earlier, whether I didn't, I'll touch on it now. Sterling, if he's left, he's up against Di Lorenzo. Di Lorenzo will not be phased by Sterling's pace and his acceleration and his quick feet. Di Lorenzo looks like an absolute athlete. He's one of those. He's the Kyle Walker of that lineup. He's been bombing forward. In the last minute, in extra time, he's still got energy. Raheem Sterling will not tire out Di Lorenzo in the same way that he has been doing. And this is where I mentioned it earlier that I'm a City fan. To me, you put Sterling on the left, and he's up against Di Lorenzo, and that is like Sterling in the Manchester derby up against Aaron Wan-Bissaka. However much it pains me to say, Wan-Bissaka seems to have Sterling, he's got his number. They quite often have a one-on-one clash. Sterling, he's a top player. Occasionally he's coming out on top. There's lots of times he's quite quiet because he's got this athletic fullback up against him whose job is to just go with him and just not dive in and to follow him and trust his pace and trust his athleticism. And that's the thing that Di Lorenzo will do. And I think Di Lorenzo, he can have a good game. Sterling's had a wonderful tournament, so he could still break through. He could still get past Di Lorenzo and then be up against Bonucci and Chiellini coming in the middle. But then it's Jorginho's there as well. He'll drop in. Jorginho will read that situation. If Di Lorenzo does get beat, Jorginho will drop in. They'll be prepared for that. So in my opinion, this is where we do, again, you change that. Sterling plays from the right. Sterling plays from the right and he's up against Emerson. Now that's a different prospect because Sterling then, if he's coming inside, he does those driving direct runs towards the box, towards the centre-backs with the ball. It's Emerson, who's not played regularly, who's got to track him and on his wrong foot. Emerson's left-footed, so Sterling coming in from the right, hitting Chiellini. That's potential route of success for England. Whereas the other side, and again, Jorginho could read it, but Sterling's more likely to be able to beat that first fullback playing from the right-hand side when it's Emerson he's up against. And the other thing, Emerson, from the Italians' point of view, huge loss. Spinazzola was a huge loss for them that he's missing and Emerson's in. And I thought Emerson played okay against Spain. He was a bit conservative to begin with, but then he came forward in that first half. He started to overlap Insigne, which is so, so important to Italy. They play a lopsided, imbalanced back four where Spinazzola's so attacking. Emerson did seem to get it eventually, and I think that's where he could do it. But if he's got Sterling to think about, that suddenly means Emerson's almost got the same dilemma as Shaw is going to have. You can't leave Raheem Sterling up against Chiellini and then Jorginho, even if he drops. Sterling will love even if it's a 1-on-2 battle versus Jorginho and Chiellini, either of those or both. If he gets on a run against those two, he can get past them, or he can create space for others. So Emerson would have to sit. And if Emerson sits, Walker's got Insigne. He can follow him. Walker's comfortable coming inside in possession. He's not scared of being in the middle of the pitch. He can follow Insigne. There's no one overlapping on the other outside. So moving Sterling, it breaks up a partnership between him and Shaw, but that has to be broken anyway. Sterling plays from the right. He's got a great chance to roam. And if he does roam and he leaves the man free, it's Emerson. It's not Spinazzola. So that is absolutely... Well, it's not fine, because that's tempting fate. It's allowable. It's arguably, okay. If Emerson bombs forward and scores a 30-yard screamer, nobody's expecting that. So even if you sometimes in football, you've got to risk a player being the one who's in space and having the ball. And this Italy lineup, the player you want that to be is Emerson in the situation, especially when he's not been playing a lot. So we've got Sterling on the right. I think, I said earlier about Kane. He's going to be up against Chiellini and Bonucci. Kane's going to have an absolute monster night against those two. Two brilliant centre-backs for so many years for Italy and for Juventus. And Kane's going to have a good night. This is a great night for Harry Kane, because the expectation on him being able to, dominate those two centre-backs on his own, because he's going to play up front on his own. England aren't going to play a two. So Kane's up against those two, and it's he's not got that much of a chance. However good Harry Kane is, and he's getting better and better in the tournament. I think he preserved energy early on. He did not press. He looked unfit, because I think it was intentional for him not to do a lot of running in that group stage. So he's looked better and better. But if Harry Kane scores one, he's done well. If he scores two, he's amazing against those two defenders. And the other thing, again, I touched on it before about Spain. England need to learn from that Spanish performance where Dani Olmo played a false nine. Harry Kane can drop off the front. He can play that position as well. He can drop off. He was doing some great link-up play in the Denmark game, and especially in the first half, he was doing some great stuff of dropping off, winning free kicks as well. Even though set pieces aren't going to be as much of a weapon, or aren't likely to be as much of a weapon against Italy, unless we've recognised Roberto Mancini is a zonal marking manager. That was always a thing he was criticised at Man City. It was highlighted so many times. Didn't matter how organised Man City were. The fact he played zonal marking at corners in particular destroyed English pundits. It blew their minds that a successful team could play zonal marking and still win things, which we did. But it's with man-to-man marking, there's positives and negatives to any system. Italy are likely to be zonal, so there is a potential to get a run in. Maguire from a corner, have a run in, running in, leaping up. John Stones, Maguire, Harry Kane. There's potential there. But that's gone off track a little bit. But England, so we can still win free kicks, but it's we're going to do well to score from a free kick. An indirect free kick against Italy, you're going to do very well. And we haven't quite, only Darmsgaard has scored a direct free kick. I don't think we're going to play for them necessarily. And it'd probably be Mount who'd be the one to take it, or potentially Kane, if it's outside the box. But I don't think, it's not one we're going to rely on that, I don't think. So it's Kane just may have to play off scraps, but he's good enough to score one of those scraps. That's the thing with Harry Kane. But he's almost he's not the most important weapon. And I said the only place we've not got is the left winger, left attacker. And this is where I thought he looked brilliant when he came on against Denmark. I'm a Man City fan. He's not been as involved as I certainly thought he was going to be at the start of the tournament. Because he's one player that I think the rest of the world, the rest of Europe, will be looking at and thinking, they've watched Man City and watched how City play, and they respect Pep Guardiola, which most countries do, and how this player has developed in the last season in particular. Phil Foden will not be overawed by a European final. He can play. left wing. So he's up against Di Lorenzo, which Di Lorenzo said before was really athletic. So against Sterling, he could potentially match up against him. Foden drifting. Does Di Lorenzo want to drift across the pitch? No, I don't think so. Unless Mancini's double bluffing or is anticipating this change in lineup from England, and then he can direct Di Lorenzo to follow him. They've got to do this off the cuff, because this would be a surprise for England to do this. You know what I'd even say, saying that, play Rashford. I'd even be like Rashford, Foden, someone like that from the left wing, because, and I would still go with Foden, because I sort of touched on Kane. I think there's potential there. That's sort of happening extra time a little bit. Foden false 9, Harry Kane just drop off to a little bit, come to the left wing. So, Foden can drift, play, and he can do that thing of the little wall passes, the 1-2s, things like that. Retaining possession, like I said, we want to play like Spain. We want to make sure we keep the ball, tire Italy out if we can do. And then the mistakes might creep in. Emerson might leave Sterling free, who's got a run on Chiellini and Bonucci. We've got Kane drifting up. If Kane's dropping off and drifting, we've got Foden. To me, and then Mount coming up as well. To me, we've got this potential there. And, the other thing I said, the overlapping fullbacks, Walker can potentially attack, because Insigne's always going to come inside. Even if he's got a run on Stones, he's going to come inside. So that's where Phillips can drop. It's like the potential there is flipped. England's strength has been England's left-hand side. But England don't need the same. We can be lopsided, I think, in this game. We can afford to flip it. We can afford to be strong on our right side as an attacking force. And that's where you have Walker with Sterling, or Foden can drift there as well. They combine there. And then Mount comes in late from a Walker cutback. Why not? That's, to me, where England can potentially have joy. It's down the right-hand side, and it's depth, but also the two midfielders. It's Mount and Henderson have got potential in this game to surprise Italy. And this is where Gareth Southgate has been a tremendous manager for England. I think Gary Neville said earlier in the tournament, it's a perfect fit for England, and he can carry on doing it. And Southgate's made big calls, he's made big decisions, he's been brave, he's stuck to his principles. And I think there's a reflection on Gareth Southgate that his principles are defensive and conservative, and they're not, in my opinion. It's pragmatic. He's pragmatic and calm. That's what he projects to his players, and that's how England are playing tactically. But it's like, the actual pragmatic thing to do in this game, in this final, is to change it. It's to almost start this final as we finish the semi-final. Foden, Henderson, no Rice, no Saka, Shaw playing more defensive, and just let Foden, Sterling, Kane, Mount would still be on the pitch, which I don't think he was in the Denmark game, but Phillips sitting, but decent in possession. And it's like, we know where Italy's strengths are. It's going to be in Chiesa, so you can't leave him free. It's going to be Insigne cutting in. It's going to be Verratti and Barella with the energy and the technique, and Jorginho sitting and reading the game and playing decent passes. It's like we know what Italy are going to hit us with, and we know Italy are going to be not anxious, but they're going to be like frustrated that Spinazzola, their strength, they're real. This is the thing with England. I think we're playing Saka. We played it because we have Mailer, the left wing back for Denmark, was a threat. There's not a threat as much from the left wing. Emerson's a good player, but he's not the threat that Spinazzola would have been. It would have been totally different, I think, if Spinazzola was playing still. But he's not, and we need to capitalise on it. Sterling's been on fire, so match him up against Emerson. Foden on, and then if Rashford could come on for Foden if needs be, to come on if it's not working. You've got Grealish can come on for Mount. You've got, and then if you need to protect it, you can bring Rice on. You can protect it at the end and actually tend to sit and not bomb forward like he tends to have done in some of the other games towards the end of the match. But England, obviously in a brilliant position now, in a final. None of us really expected it. We never really believed it, even if we said we did believe it. Because we didn't allow ourselves to believe it because of all the times we've had false dawns in the past. Well, we're in a final now. And I think the reality is, if Southgate can be brave and pragmatic again and change his lineup as I've outlined here, rather than going for the expected Rice-Phillips partnership in midfield that Italy will be expecting, and they'll be planning how to dominate those players, dominate the ball, we've got to flip it. Play like Spain, keep hold of the ball, tire Italy out because they did look tired in the last game, and we look fresh in our extra time against Denmark. Capitalise on that. Capitalise on Sterling up against Emerson. Let Foden have the confidence. Let him have the belief. Let him have the support that he is good enough to star in a final. And he can do it. Let Kane be Kane. Let Shaw sit. Let Walker bomb on. Show his energy off. England have got a great chance. But I think we've got a greater chance if we just tweak things and go for the lineup that I've outlined there. So to recap, Pickford in goal, the usual back four, but with a more defensive Luke Shaw, Maguire, Stones, Walker. Midfield three, Mount, Phillips, Henderson, and attacking three, Foden on the left, and Kane and Sterling on the right. To me, that is a lineup that can win the Euros. It can combat Italy's strengths, can capitalise on their weaknesses, and can bring football home. Fingers crossed.